Anthony, thanks for joining me today.
It's great to be here again.
Anthony, tell me about Cannex. This is a new LP listed in Canada that I've yet to hear anything about.
So Cannex is focused primarily on the U.S. market. Probably 60% of our time will be focused in the U.S., 20% Canada, 20% overseas. We just did an RTO financing. Our first day of trading was yesterday. We started off with a $25 million offering led by Beacon Securities, but upsized it to 48. We had very, very strong demand. And as a part of the transaction, we acquired the assets of the largest cultivator processor in Washington State. And so the thesis here is to take the operating platform in Washington that already exists, that has exceptionally strong brands, very large cultivation facilities, and expand into other U.S. jurisdictions.
Okay.
We're looking primarily at the western U.S. initially, Nevada, Arizona, California, but we want to be, a coast-to-coast, multi-state, branded cannabis company.
Not at all ambitious.
Not at all.
So how much cannabis do you currently produce now in Washington?
So last year they produced just over 7,500 kgs, which if they were a Canadian company would put them in #2 position. They have the #1 and the #2 flower brands in the state. They also have 7 of the top 10 edibles brands in the state. In Washington, you cannot be vertically integrated, so they are a cultivator processor only. They sell wholesale to the dispensaries, and they currently service about 80% of the dispensaries in the state, and there's about 520 in Washington. So they are by far and above the most dominant player there. Their revenues for January of this year were $3.4 million for the month. The next largest company was 2.2, so they're 50% larger than the #2 player.
Okay, what's your average sale price per gram?
At a wholesale level, it's between $350 US in Washington State.
Okay, and what's your all-in cost per gram at this point?
That's a great question. These guys have phenomenal yields. They're totally focused on that. Their grams per square foot yield are somewhere between 450 to 500 grams a square foot, and their cost is about 75 cents all in. So that's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, sure is. Is it profitable now?
Yes, it is profitable.
Oh, okay, great. A profitable marijuana company.
I know that really differentiates us, and I think that's what made the financing so successful, James, was that we walked and spoke to a lot of investors, and they said exactly what you said. That's unusual for a cannabis company.
Right.
And these guys have been around for 4 years. They've been kind of off the radar as far as the Canadian capital markets go.
Sure.
And now they wanted to leverage that expertise. They needed access to capital to grow, and the Canadian capital markets were the best source for capital, the lowest cost of capital.
Sure. Washington State, when it first went legal, they made a bit of a dog's breakfast of the whole regime and caused a lot of the companies to go out of business.
Yeah.
Has that all been rectified now?
Not completely, which is a part of the opportunity for us, to be quite frank with you. There's, I think, 1,100 licenses in the state, which is, insane when you consider that, there's only 6 million people in Washington. And so we're seeing a lot of failures. Companies raised a couple of $1 million, realized that growing cannabis was a lot more difficult than they realized, and they are, one by one kind of folding, which gives us greater opportunity to increase our market share. We currently have about 10% of the Washington State wholesale market, and we want to move that up into the 20s over the next couple of years.
Oh, that's interesting. So I guess it's very competitive for the sale price, thus your low wholesale price per gram.
Well, we look at it sort of 2 separate markets. It's competitive on the dried flower, but not so much on the edible side of the market. The edibles are, higher margin, more sustainable margin, very much more brand driven. The product mix in Washington is about 70% dried flower, 30% edibles. Our product mix is 55% dried flower, 45% derivative products, we call it. So we make edibles, vapes, tinctures, sublingual, all kinds of different things. But that's where you can really, build brand equity. We're probably the best processors in the state. We produce a molecular distillate, which we use to infuse all of our products.
Okay.
We have 3 industrial kitchens, one for cookies, one for chocolates, one for other kinds of candies.
Right.
So it's a very scaled up operation, 300 employees, 180,000 square feet of facility, 60,000 square feet of canopy, over 4,000 lights. It's a going concern.
Sure. So what's the plan for the $48 million you just raised?
The plan is to go and start to look at similar acquisition opportunities in other key states.
Oh,
As I said, the western U.S. is right there in front of us, but we're looking at opportunities right across coast to coast, and also in Canada. You know, we see the opportunity in Canada is to really take some of the processing expertise that these guys have developed in Washington and leverage that into Canada. Also, Canada is a great market to export from. You can't export from Washington because its exports are federally regulated, and you still got that federal-state disconnect in the U.S.
Sure.
So we see that as being a big opportunity as well.
Okay, great. That's a great introduction to the company. We're going to leave it there for now. We're going to come out and visit you with a camera crew, and we'll follow up with you in a quarter's time or so and see how you're doing. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thanks.